All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Fascinating Talks. I'm your host, Dave Kehnast, brought to you by Kehnast Coaching. I say it at the beginning of almost every episode, WTF is life coaching. Nobody has any freaking clue until they get into a conversation that they never anticipated they would be in. It's pretty cool stuff. Hit me up if you'd like. And then today I've got a really cool guest who we go back almost 11 years now, which is kind of crazy to think about. When we met, you were a pup when we met. How old are you now?
All right, so I'm 32, and I guess we met when I was like 21,
Yeah.
20, 21, something like that.
Yeah,
So,
I was 32 when we met. Weird. Time flies.
You like that?
Crazy. So Jeff Frumess is here, and yeah, I know him from Chi-Town, good old Chicago, little Chicago love in the house. But where do you live now?
I'm back in Westchester, New York.
Westchester, New York.
Yeah, sitting right above the Bronx. Thank you.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. And then you were in Israel for a while. Didn't you go to Israel?
So the reason why I left Chicago back when we ran in similar circles, I left to go embark. I graduated from college, and nothing tied me down, and I was in love with an Israeli girl who I met on Birthright, and I was like, screw this, I'm going to go sign up for this Mossad program and try and make her my wife.
Nice. And did you do that?
And I did. And I did it with a son. So
yeah, you had a baby. Nice job.
Yes, thank you.
Major win. Fist bump. Virtual fist bump over the internet. Cool.
Yeah, although at the time it was very disastrous. It was quite an experience, but so far it's as of now, I mean, it's turned out okay. Can't complain.
How old's your kid?
So my son is going to be 3 in September.
Nice. Cool, man. Good for you.
Yeah,
all right, brother. Same question I had. And Jeff's a filmmaker. We're going to talk about film. He makes these cool horror films. Yes.
Yeah.
Horror-ish films.
Horror. I think the ish is key there too. But
totally. Yeah. Cool. Horror-ish as opposed to horror-ish. Horror-ish movie.
Weird.
Yeah, totally. And he's a punk rock guy. I remember you got that thing going on too.
Oh, I still am. Punk rocker till the day I die.
Nice.
I make my movies punk rock.
Nice. So maybe we can dance around what punk rock is here in a few. But first question, man, what fascinates you about yourself?
Okay. So what fascinates me, and this is a very interesting question. It's also a very, I don't know, it could go so many ways, this question, because on one hand, you're like, it's a very, it's a very self-indulgent question, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because it's not necessarily bad to be a self-seeking individual. Depending on what that is, it can be very healthy. And in this case, when you ask me that question, I try to think of it as in like a self-esteem sort of way, about what do I like, or what do I like about myself that amazes myself. And I guess the answer is that ultimately inside of me is endless potential to do what I want to do in life, as long as I am willing to apply myself. I haven't read this book, so full disclosure, I haven't read this book, but there's this book by this guy, Malcolm Gladwell, called The Outliers or something. And there's this outlier principle, and it's the belief that you become an outlier, you become a master, you become an expert at something when you've done it for 10,000 hours. But part of that is that you have to do something for 10,000 hours. And in order to be successful, you need to be consistent. And so I've tried to apply that sort of philosophy in what I do. So,
and what do you do?
Well, I'm a filmmaker.
Right.
And I don't say
how many hours do you think you've put in thus far on the 10,000 hour scale?
And I don't know. I really don't know. But I've been doing this. I've been trying. I hate using the word try. Try is a terrible word. I have been making movies and video content for over 10 years.
Nice.
But I've only made one feature film thus far. I'm working on my second one right now. I've shot one feature-length documentary when I went on tour with the band. We went from Moscow to California, but that thing will probably never see the light of day for reasons that I cannot discuss publicly. And then I was working on another passion project about the Misfits that will see the light of day, because what happens sometimes in life is that you're freaking trying to make something work, try to make something happen. You pour yourself into something and you just can't get it. You're not making the distance that you were, or it's just not, the wall is not budging. And what you have to do is, you can't throw it away. You can't get, what you have to do is, when you get really frustrated, when I get really frustrated, I have to put it on a shelf. I have to walk away and focus on something else. And what's amazing, what's magical is that sometimes things have a way of boomeranging back around, or eventually the passion or the fire for that project gets reignited and I revisit it. And so I'm still doing this thing that I had initially decided that I wasn't going to do anymore. I don't know when it's going to come out. I just know that I'm never going to give up on it. So.
Nice. And so what's the word integrity mean to you?
The word integrity, oh boy, that is a theme in my life. I can't tell you, for so many reasons. But if I had to sum it all up, the word integrity means, very simple definition. The word integrity means to me, what do I do when nobody else is looking?
Right.
And what does that mean? It means that, like, let's say that you go to a place for an hour out of the day where you're in front of people and you're talking about your life or yourself, and you can, or even just social media, you can talk. I could talk about everything that I'm doing, but it's like, what am I doing when nobody else is watching? And if I'm still acting by the same morals that I spout to the world,
right,
then I have integrity. By the same token, I believe that when it comes to charity, the only integrity is to do the reverse, where you never talk about it. True charity is not charity. If the moment that I speak about the charity that I do, outside of saying that I like to do charity, like let's talk about a specific thing that I've done, I have taken away from that the pureness, the integrity, if you will, of that act, because I've inserted, whether I was meaning to or not, I've inserted a circumstance where I benefit from it. And I believe that the truest form of charity is selfless.
Nice. So what's the relationship between charity and humility?
The connection is, well, it's partially that integrity I just spoke about of, humility. The humility of it is to not have to talk about it. The humility of it is to, that if I do something, I'm not even going to say what it is. If I do X is between myself, the individual who received X or was a part of this, situation. Right. And if you believe in that sort of thing, a benevolent creator, a higher power, or what have you, and that's it.
Right.
And the byproduct of doing that stuff is that it's an esteemable action. And so what I get out of it is that I feel like I did something good in the world, and that's it. Right. That's where I have to leave it.
Right. Yeah, I've heard it said in certain circles that if you want to discover what it means to truly be humble, go do something nice for somebody and don't tell anybody about it.
Oh, it's the only, in my experience, in my opinion, for me, it's been the only way. And I make a rare exception where I'm trying to explain in a closed group of people, maybe if there's two or three people, and I'm using it as an example where I will then break that sort of anonymity because I want to highlight the example. And so even in that situation, I am still benefiting. Whether I want to benefit or not, I benefit because I'm letting people know that I've done X. And so truly the purest form, the truest form, the one that has the most humility and the most integrity and the most honesty is when it's between like as I said, myself, the other, and whatever else is out there in the world.
Yeah. Nice, man. And so the definition, like the working definition that we use in coaching for integrity is which is actually Gandhi's definition, which is when your intentions and your words and your actions are all lined up. Right. So it's just kind of like piggybacking off what you're saying, like, what am I doing when other people aren't looking? And so what do you think and we say that it's access to results. It's always your integrity. Right. So it's doing the things that you say you're going to do. So how do you think that definition fits inside of these things that you're up to, these projects that you're up to?
Well, I guess I can sort of answer that autobiographically.
Yeah, please.
So when I was 18, before you knew me, Dave, I was in community college. I was aimless. I was very depressed because all of my friends were off at like, 4-year schools, getting degrees to be lawyers and doctors and financial people. And I was going to the community college with no concentration. And I was sort of, I was just still in that construct of like, oh, you need to go to college and then you need to go and have like a career, a vocation of some sort. And just thinking that I'm outside of the system and that I'm just so bummed out. And working at Sam Goody and
Nice.
just living at home and just being so just like aimless and bummed out. And I'll never forget that I watched a documentary on the bonus disc of Kevin Smith's Clerks. It came out
Nice.
in 2004, the 10th anniversary edition.
Right.
It was a documentary called The Snowball Effect. I'm not going to get into Kevin Smith's whole story, but if you're ever looking for an inspirational story or something to, really like learn about, or maybe even, Dave, if you ever, something you want to, if it ever applies to one of your coaching scenarios, you should check it out. Check out Kevin Smith's backstory. And basically it's told in this documentary called The Snowball Effect, that just details how he made this movie. And I liken it to the way, in Batman's mythology, Batman became Batman the moment that he was sitting in his giant study, brooding in the dark. He's failing, trying to be this vigilante. He's failing. And I'm not trying to compare myself to Batman. It's just
no, please do compare yourself to Batman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I kind of feel like
all good, man. No, go for it.
It's a little bit like Batman. So I'm like sitting and brooding like Batman does his origin story. And what happens to Batman is that Bruce Wayne is that a bat flies through the window, crashes through his window. And suddenly he realized that criminals are a cowardly, superstitious lot and that he must become the thing that he fears. I must become the bat and become Batman in order to, ascend to my potential, because Bruce Wayne, and that's why I love the character Batman. Batman is a story about a guy who basically trades punches with gods when he's just a mortal man, because he's the example of a mortal man who is literally strove to unlock his potential as a human being and push all of his limits. And so he goes, that's it. I shall be a bat. And for me, I'm watching the Clerks movie. Kevin Smith. He's like a friggin' convenience store clerk, in real life. He's like, and I'm like, that's it. I want to make movies. I want to be, because I love movies. I have, encyclopedic knowledge of movies. Here I am spending all my money at Sam Goody buying movies. I'm like, I want to be a filmmaker. That's what I want to do. And it was this moment that was the very beginning of essentially almost a 10-year journey to shooting my first feature-length film, and I switched all my classes. I started going to supplemental film classes because they didn't have production classes at this community college. I never took the SATs. I transferred. I got into Columbia College because they had open admission policy and they were like this art school. And before I know it, I'm out in Chicago, and that's where I met you. And I started, learning about how to, like, actual production. I had gotten a camera and I started shooting these little weird music videos to Pixies music, and
Nice.
and I started making movies, and always the goal was this Everest. I called it an Everest because I literally it felt impossible. This idea. Just the way that it was impossible that I would ever graduate high school. It was impossible that I would ever get into a 4-year college. It was impossible that I would ever make this girl but actually marry this girl that I was deeply in love with. Mm-hmm. All these things seem impossible until you do them. And the last one of those was making a feature-length film. And going back to the Gladwell outlier principle about consistency, it was like, I just have never stopped in one way or another. Everything I've done, just about every single thing I've done in my life has always been an ends to the means being allowing me to make a film, be a filmmaker. And most recently, that was while shooting my first feature-length film, Romeo. I was working as a waiter at P.F. Chang's. And then now because I have a family and because I have responsibilities, but still won't let go of my dream. Now I'm sort of switched over for my second film. I'm like in this weekend warrior position where I need to figure out how to do shit on the weekends. So,
Well, I mean, dude, what I hear is the hero's journey, right? Batman's a version of the hero's journey.
A little bit, yeah.
Right. But what I hear is that like nothing will stop you from reaching your land of Oz.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's funny because, every once in a while, I don't mind saying this publicly. First of all, I can't do any of this stuff without my wife's support.
Mm-hmm.
She has been such a rock, and sometimes she can be an obstacle that I have to sort of negotiate and talk to and remind her of the greater thing. But my wife has been so supportive because she knows that this is my passion, and she loves me because I'm passionate about something. Dave, are you familiar with Sean Stevenson?
I'm not.
Okay, well, you got to check out this dude. Let me send you some shit when you're done. This guy's going to blow your mind. In the realm of relationships, about 8 years ago, when I had sort of had a break from my wife and we were not talking, and I was like in this like, I was listening to this guy Sean Stevenson talking about the power of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking about like, it's really convoluted. I won't get into the whole thing, but you should check him out. He's talking about like the power of attraction, and what attracts my wife to me is that I am so passionate about something.
Right.
And she loves that about me. She's told me as much.
Right.
And just the way that there are qualities that I love my wife for, and they are usually qualities that I don't have in myself, just the way that she doesn't have a driving passion in that sort of way. Her passion is to be a mother, to be a teacher, and she's doing those things. But she doesn't have an artistic passion the way I have the same artistic passion. So she's attracted to that in me, just the way that I'm attracted to the way that she is the greatest mother that ever lived to our child. Not that I'm not a good father, but just that she, oh my God, I wish she teaches me how to be a good father. And that's part of what Sean Stevenson talks about too. He talks about how like when you're attracted, if you're a man, I guess we have to mention the fact out of sensitivity that at least in this example, we're talking about cisgendered heterosexual attraction, at least by the way that I was reading into it. And that I was attracted to my wife's masculine energy and she was attracted to my feminine energy. And that when you find someone, you are attracted to the sort of opposite thing that you are lacking in, and together, united, you sort of complement each other, and I find that to be very true in my relationship because my wife and I are such different people. I love horror movies. She hates horror movies. Like stuff like that. We like different types of music. There are so many things, and yet we're together somehow. We met each other. We live 5,000 miles apart from each other, and we didn't speak the same languages, and yet something attracted. There was a magnetism that attracted us to each other, and here we are with a child. 10 years later, literally 10 years later. It's 10 years to the almost to the month. So, yeah. Sorry, that was kind of a rant.
Well, what do you think the relationship between masculinity and purpose is?
Masculinity and purpose.
I'm actually jiving off David Deita's work, The Way of the Superior Man, and he basically
I don't know it.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with that.
It's a good book. It offers a specific framework, right? So not everyone's going to agree with it. Okay. I find it to be a really good tool. However, but he basically suggests or says that a man must put his purpose even ahead of his woman. And that's ultimately what the woman is attracted to is a man is like that the man is so attracted to his purpose.
Yes.
And the book is really written from the lens of like, this is masculine energy. This is what masculinity is.
Gotcha.
Which is masculinity is actually a penetrative force, whereas femininity is a receptive force. Like if you just really want to dumb it down, and a lot of people take issue with that, I'm like, well, just really think about it. You know what I mean? So what do you think the relationship between those two things is?
Well, what's interesting about what you just said or how you defined it is I don't disagree with that. I think that's very like profound and true, but I think it goes or at least in my personal belief, I think that it goes both ways. And because I think that, everybody of all, genders and sexes and what have you, there's a flavor of a month at this point. I mean, there's so many different ones that everybody has, multiple types of energy inside of them, however big or small on a spectrum. And so there are, and I don't know, if you said, hey, Jeff, can you sit down and define what these masculine energies are and what these feminine energies are? I don't know if I could. I think a lot of it also too is related to, there's this great movie called Hedwig and the Angry Inch and Hedwig and the Angry Inch. And it talks about the origin of love, and it talks about gnosis, and it talks about how
Gnosis, like agnostic.
Yes.
Gnosis,
Yes.
gnosis,
Like
right?
Gnosis.
Right. Gnosis.
And
I know.
And there's a song called "The Origin of Love," and it's a great song. You should listen to it. And it talks about the origin of what love is. But it talks about a lot of this stuff about masculine energy and feminine energy coming together and making something one. But to go back, sorry, I'm dancing around what you're saying. You're asking me how does masculine energy define purposeness?
What's the relationship between masculinity and purpose?
I mean, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I know how to answer that, only because I think purpose can be connected to femininity too. How is it just masculinity?
Well, no, I'm not to suggest. It's not to suggest that it isn't.
Oh, okay. So you're just using masculine because I'm a man, per se, or?
My experience of your energy is just very masculine. It's very penetrative. It sees what it wants and it's going out and getting it, and it's not stopping.
Gotcha.
And even when it's putting something on the shelf, right, it's coming back to it. And there's just there's a strong sense of what I say will be in you.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, I would say that my masculinity defines me as a human being, defines my purpose, defines, and I'll tell you something. I get depressed. I wouldn't say that I'm bipolar or manic depressive or diagnosed with any of these things, but I suffer from depression sometimes in the way that I think, not to normalize depression because it can be crippling every depression is different. But I'm just saying that there are some days I wake up and I am truly chemically imbalanced. I feel it. And I know that what I do is, just like a business writes off a bad investment, I write off a bad day, a depressing day. I go, okay, I got to chalk up this day. I am not going to, there's literature that I've read where it talks about morbid reflection. And sometimes I can get paralyzed by morbid reflection instead of striving to pack the most into the stream of life, which is how I like to live my life, truly. There are prayers and things that I've said in my mind in the morning. I don't say it anymore because I've said it so many times that I literally feel it. So I literally don't have to say it anymore. I just feel it. And what I feel is I ask to please be to divorce myself from morbid thinking, for that would diminish my usefulness to myself and to others and to everybody, and instead pack the most into the stream of life every day. But there are days where I wake up and I am like just beyond morbid reflection, and I have to just grip my chair and sit down and hold it out. But what always pulls me out of it, to bring it all the way back around, because it's like, Jeff, where are you going with this tangent? To bring it all the way back around. But what always brings me back down to earth, or brings me up from the underworld of despair, is my purpose. And I have a life, and that it's amazing. I have so many passions in my life. And, when people have asked me for advice in the past, or when I've been asked to give advice, I always say, once you've overcome, or once you've addressed some of your personal troubles, find passion. Find your passion and let it, as Charles Bukowski says, let it kill you. Let your passion kill you. And that's what I did with the filmmaking. I let it kill me. I let it, and I'm like Batman when it comes to making movies. And I train. And what's funny? Talk about, I tried to do the filmmaking thing in so many different ways, Dave. So my goal was, I wanted to be a director, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, first I gotta, start as a PA. And so I'm working in New York City. I'm working on Home Garden Design Network, whatever, InDesign Star, some bullshit, reality TV show as a PA, and I'm being micromanaged by 8 different people, and they're using all this stupid terminology, and I'm so miserable and I hate it. And I'm bad at it. I am bad at being a PA. I can't do it. I suck. And I'm going, well, if you can't be a PA, how the fuck are you ever going to be a director? This sucks. And you know what? And it goes back to that way of thinking about school and about like, the thing about school in general is that it's like you line up a bunch of animals, a fish, a monkey, a donkey, an elephant, a wolf. And you say, okay, here's the lesson. Go climb a tree. Go climb a tree, elephant. Go climb a tree, fish. And then all these things try to climb a tree. And you know who's the only one who succeeds? The fucking monkey. The fucking monkey. And it's like, so here I am feeling like a fish trying to climb a tree. And I'm going, this isn't for me. So I wash out. I'm not a PA. I become a waiter instead. So I'm working as a busboy first. I'm working as a busboy. And then I'm like, well, I need to get an internship somewhere. So then I start interning at a post-production house. Now, mind you, when I went for my BA in film and video production, I did not take the director's classes. I did not, even though I wanted to be a director. I took every other class. I took location sound recording. I took production design. I took post-production sound mixing. I took editing. I took all these other things. And so, oh crap, this thing is not, oh shit, sorry. And so I took all these other things. I didn't take the directing thing. And much in the same way, here I am now in real life. And I'm like, oh, I need to I'll intern at a post-production studio because I need a day job, something in the field, because that's going to get me closer to my thing, and it wasn't the PA thing. And so here I am interning at the studio. I'm mopping floors. I'm not doing any sort of work. And whenever I do try to do the work, I'm just not good at it. I'm just not good at it. I suck. And I'm hitting myself in the head going, you're so stupid. You don't know how to do this shit. What's wrong with you? You're a failure, blah, blah, blah. And you know what? I'll never forget. I'm sitting in a mixing studio, falling asleep. I'm with the mixer and a client who's they're mixing a film about birds in Central Park. And they're discussing the different types of tweets that birds do. And I fell asleep in the session. And I embarrassed the mixer, who then told my supervisor, let this kid go. And after 6 months, they're like, we think that your internship is up and you should go. Bye. And so I left. And that was the greatest thing that could have ever happened. Because at first I'm like, wow, here I am. I failed at another thing. I just am no good at any of this shit. And then that's how I realized, like, what the fuck are you doing why are you wasting all your time with this shit? You want to be a director? Go fucking direct a movie. Go do it. And so I was like, all right. So I set about, first I jumped on this opportunity because of this work I was doing on this Misfits project. I had put the Misfits project on the shelf because I couldn't go anywhere. That was concurrent at the same time as the post-production studio. And this band was breaking up. They're going on one last tour, and they're looking to make this DVD. And so
are you referring to the Misfits?
No, a different band who I'd rather not name.
Yeah, fair enough.
And they're breaking up, but they're going on one last European and United States tour. And so they're like, they're asking they're putting out into the universe like, hey, can somebody come and, film us on this tour? Mm-hmm. And I responded and I go, yeah, I'll do that. Let me be the guy who does that. And so I jumped on tour. We kickstarted a bunch of money to subsidize expenses. And I went on this massive journey with them. That project didn't work out. And so now here I am, and it's about 2012. And I just started, I'm like, you know what? Once again, you're trying to do other people's shit. You're trying to do a movie. Like, you need to do your own thing. You need to write and direct your own movie. That is what you always want to do. That's what you need to do. And so I started this process, and it took me a year. I wrote this screenplay, and I treated it like a job. And that's another thing that I learned about, if you want to be the outlier, if you want to do something, if you're not getting paid to do something, but you really want to get paid for it someday. I'm sorry. Did you want to say something, Dave?
Was that like GoPro, like Stephen Pressfield?
I don't know what that is. Tell me.
It's a book, The War of Art. And he just says that successful artists are people that just go pro. In other words, they make themselves professional.
Well, I would say you
turned your filmmaking into a job, even though you weren't making money.
Yes, 100%. Yes. I don't know that book or that guy, but that is exactly what I did. And so suddenly I started checking in like, you know, I wasn't able to do it every day because of work, but I checked in like it was a job, and I would write as often as possible. And, you know, I like to use the euphemism of you got to write every single day. I wasn't actually writing every single day, but as often as I possibly could, because I realized, even though that I'm not getting paid for this work, this is my job, this is my calling, and I need to treat this as if I was getting paid. And so it took me a year. It's like, you know, there are certain things that we do the first time, and the birthing process in learning how to do something can take much longer than it would the second time. So it took me a year to write the screenplay, and it's like climbing a mountain. You reach the top of the mountain, you go, yes, I did it, I reached it. And then you realize that what you've written is no good. It sucks, because not that it's bad, but it's just like, dude, like, great, you accomplished something, but, you know, it's not, you're going to think it's good, but it's not good. And I realized I had enough humility to know I'm never going to be able to film this. It's outside of my means. And so I put that script on the shelf, and then I wrote another script. It was like a bolt of lightning, because the first one was not a bolt of lightning. The first one was forced. And Dave, do you believe in the muse?
Believe in what?
The muse.
Yeah, as a concept?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I believe in the muse. I believe in divine energy. I believe, and it's a lot like some of our other beliefs where, you know, we basically make ourselves antennas. I make myself an antenna for divine energy to run through me. Right. And when everything is right in my life, when I'm open, metaphorically, whatever you want to call it, when my mind is open, then the divine energy can pass through. And it's a lot of it has to do with ego. When I like let go of my ego.
Yeah. And so what do you think the relationship between that and artistic genius is?
I think there's a balance between those two, because on one hand, first of all, when you use the word genius, there's another word you have to connect to the word genius. Not for every genius, but for many. Genius can often come with the word madness. Right. And meaning that a lot of people that are really smart but not mad will never, ever jump out onto a ledge and risk falling.
So you got to be really smart and mad, and that's genius.
I think so. Right. I maybe not in every single situation.
No, I hear you. And maybe occasionally those two dance back and forth for control, the smartness and the madness.
Oh, yes.
And that's kind of what genius is.
Yes.
As a phenomenon.
Yes.
Right. Cool.
Yes. And I think part of that too, though, also is, and then also I think ego is a huge part of it too, because you really have to believe in yourself. You have to go, I know what I'm doing is right, when nobody else in the world thinks that it is, or when the world, which is like the ocean, and you feel like you're fighting the actual ocean, when you just feel like it is literally impossible, but you still have to believe in yourself. And that's when like the ego is a positive thing. And so I think all these ingredients, because they're like ingredients, but I think one of them, for sure, at least for me, is that when I can remove the part of where I think I have all the answers, then the actual answers from some other place, maybe somewhere else in the universe, the answers can then permeate through my skull, into my brain, and then and come out my fingertips. And so that's what happened. I had a bolt of lightning. The first script I wrote, that was not the case. I had a good idea, but then I forced myself to write it. And when I forced myself, I put too much of my own ego into it, and it wasn't as good, because I had good taste, but I didn't have good skill. And there's a difference between taste and skill. You could have a really good taste, but not a lot of ability, and you're always trying to close the gap between the two, and it's very hard as an artist. And so here I am with my second idea. It's like a bolt of lightning. It goes boom, and it was the muse had come to me. And so what took me a year the first time took me 2 years. What took me a year the first time took 2 months the second time. And that was the script for this movie. And I didn't wait around. I had seen some other guys do it for $6,000. I said, if they can take a camera and shoot this movie for $6,000, fuck, I could do the same thing. And so I took that script, and over the course of 15 months, it took me 15 months to do it, I made my first feature-length film. And there were so many times where I thought that I was going to fail, where I thought that it was going to end. And there were moments where I had to take risks and go, the outcome of this may be that you don't end up with a finished film, because my uncompromising. I had to compromise with an uncompromising vision. And when you compromise with something that's uncompromising, you basically go either.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean an uncompromising vision?
Okay, so when you create something, or when you have an idea or a vision in your mind, because when you're making a film, Dave, you have to think about it like this. You are literally willing something from inside your brain into reality. You are manifesting existence. You are creating something from nothing. And so with that comes uncompromising vision. You might have a clear-cut, concise vision, as most filmmakers do, of what you want to do. But Murphy's Law, resources, and lack of ability can all stand in your way from literally creating the exact duplicate of what is in your brain. And so you're faced with a decision every day. And the decision is, can't get what I want. I can either compromise and have something that's less, but something that exists, or be uncompromising and have nothing at all. And if I had been uncompromising in my vision, meaning I'd have like no humility about it,
right,
I would not have a movie.
Got it.
So, and that has been, that has just been and now I'm ready to do it all over again with the next movie, because that's what happens. You know what's harder than making your first movie, Dave?
Making your fifth one?
Making your second movie. Because you go, oh, I've done it. I've arrived at the top of the mountain. I look over the view. Everything's glorious. I'm the best. And then you know what happens? You turn around and there's an even bigger mountain behind you that you have to climb. And you know what? May there always be another mountain, because if there's not, you're dead.
So what happened between Godfather 2 and Godfather 3?
Maybe the mountain was to make something that wasn't Godfather 3. Maybe Godfather 3 was the easy way out, and the mountain was something much more difficult. And by making the easier movie, he ended up making a shit movie. Did you ever think about that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Many people have. Yeah. Anyway, just popped into my head. Godfather 3. Yeah. Anyway.
But I got to check out some of this stuff some of these authors you were mentioning. I've not heard of them.
I'll shoot you an email. You take something from it. You know what I mean? He's just basically saying, this is one way to perceive the world. You know what I mean? Just consider. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
of course.
One way for a man to conceive of a woman, or perceive a woman, rather. Interesting book. Well, cool, man. I mean, we do have to start wrapping up here in the next couple minutes, man. But what else would you like us to know? Do you want to share about your movie? You want to share about the Misfits? Where do you want to go?
Well, to bring it back around, I guess, to the Misfits, is just that, again, in life, never, if you reach a place, here's the one thing I've learned too, probably the greatest lesson I've ever learned in my life, and it applies to so many aspects of my life. You only fail when you give up. You only fail when you give up. And sometimes giving up is not actually giving up. It is, you are taking a detour around to victory. And so sometimes you find power in surrender. And, that's what happened with this Misfits thing, at least thus far. And I had an idea of what I thought it was, and I had an idea of how I was going to do it. And I had these preconceived notions. And when I realized that I wasn't going to get that, I was like, I failed. And now, when they reunited, I realized my passion and fervor for this band and this project sort of came back. And I was like, there's another way to skin this cat. And I was never open to, it was oblivious to me when I was trying to make it the first time. And I never would have thought about it the first time. But now that I've walked away and let go, and here's the other thing too, when you not give up, when you put something on the shelf, when you fail, and I put fail in quotes because you never really fail, you learn. But when you fail at something, it's not that you're necessarily failing at something. You give yourself, failure is an opportunity to see something at a completely different angle where you can then attack it from another position. And so that's what happened. And so now I'm realizing, I don't know when I'm going to get this project done, but I know one thing. I made a promise to myself that I'm going to finish it. And I know that there is another way to skin this cat. And so I'm going to keep on taking the steps to do it. And lastly, as with anything in life, it's how do you eat an elephant, Dave?
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time. And so sometimes success comes, going back to the consistency thing, is sometimes a great way of setting goals is, as long as I do one thing every day, no matter how big or small, I will be taking a bite out of that elephant. And so I just have to think, okay, today's really busy, but can I do one thing, even if it's the smallest thing in the world? Is there a single productive thing that I can do today that will bring me closer to my goal? And if I've achieved that, then I'm one step closer to my goal and I can check off the day as a success.
Nice, man. Cool. Yeah, dude, it just all comes back to integrity. That's all I hear is I'm going to do. Like, it's ultimately action that gets a person from where they are to where they want to be. And it's like, am I taking a bite of that elephant, or maybe even 2 or 3 in a day in service of getting there? Right. And only I know, like, the book Think and Grow Rich, it just talks about,
PMA.
Day. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's PMA, but then he also said, we got that PMA. Hey, we got that attitude.
So but he read
I know they were all about it. He actually gave that book to Ian MacKay when Minor Threat was when Minor Threat was just getting started. And a Bible, interestingly enough.
Dave, tell me, can I ask you a question? How do you feel? I know you interviewed, and I haven't listened to it yet, but you interviewed a member of Teenage Bottle Rocket, and I know this is one of your favorite bands of all time. How did that feel for you to be having a conversation with someone who you regard so highly?
Well, it's interesting because I'm good. I'm good friends with Ray, the singer. I just like know Ray from the very, very beginning.
I did not know that.
Yeah, okay. Like I saw one of their first shows ever. And
oh really?
And so I was friends with Ray and his brother, who's passed, Brandon. And but Miguel he's kind of a mystery man. Because he's kind of like the guru of the band. He's the spiritual dude. Who's the yogi. He's got the yoga studio. So being able to connect with him that was one of the most fascinating interviews I've done. Easily that's
awesome. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, check out the talk with him. He's
I was stoked for
he's a brilliant guy. And well, it's just a testament to the fact of like, I saw Jeff Clark the other day here in Encinitas. He discovered the Mavericks wave and surfed the Mavericks wave by himself for 20 years. He's a legendary big wave surfer.
Explain that. Because I know you're a surfer and you used to do a lot of lake surfing, like cold weather surfing.
Yeah. Cold weather surfing
in Michigan, I believe, right?
Chicago.
Sorry. In Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah. You would wear like really thick,
thick neoprene.
Yeah. To keep yourself warm. And I was like, how the hell does he do that? That's crazy.
Yeah. But,
what is the Maverick wave? Explain.
Oh, it's one of the biggest waves it's the biggest wave in the continental United States. It's by north of San Francisco. And
it was happening. This wave keeps occurring.
Oh yeah. It's like a 50, it's anywhere between a 20 and a 60 footer. But this guy, Jeff Clark, discovered it by him in 1975. He paddled out there by himself and he surfed it alone for 20 years. Nobody believed him that it existed.
And he didn't care.
No. And he, one day in late 90s, somebody paddled out with him. And then the next time that it broke, the next time the swell came, there were hundreds of people there. People had flown from Hawaii, and a legendary big wave surfer from Hawaii died there.
Wow.
But I bumped into him the other day, because I live in SoCal. It's like surf culture. There's surfers everywhere. And I asked him for an interview and he said, sure. And it's just a point of, it's just kind of like, it's just what happens when you go for it. Like Miguel was my Facebook friend. I sent him a message. He said, okay. And it's that simple,
Dude, that's excellent. I'm very happy for you. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's fun. So it's just a matter of going for it. I mean, you go for it and people that go for it get it eventually is what I've discovered. And it ultimately comes down to your integrity. And so that's what I want to acknowledge in you. I mean, I do have to get going here. But I really want to acknowledge you, man, for the fervor and the voraciousness, if that's a word, at which you go after this game called life, because you see it for a game and it's a game, but games are still something to be taken kind of seriously if we want to get anywhere as a result of having our life be a game. Like there are people that choose to have their lives be a game and people that just kind of choose to do life. And if you're going to have your life be a game, you got to play that game very seriously. And that's what I appreciate about you. That's what I see in you. So thank you so much, man.
Of course, man. Of course. Yeah. It's like ultimately, and one last thing, if I could say you got to go. All right. Never mind. Thank you, Dave. Dude,
it's only because I stacked my interviews on top of one another.
Listen, I was just doing the same thing. I'll let you go. Listen, we'll talk in Facebook Messenger. Thank you so much.
Sounds good, man. We'll keep you posted. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Fascinating Talks. We've been talking with Jeff Frumess. And talk to you next time. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.
Bye.